like a backstage pass to the world of fly fishing travel. This is Waypoints, the podcast of destination angling. News and events, helpful travel tips, destination profiles, great stories, and expert advice from some of the most seasoned and experienced names in fishing travel. Waypoints is presented by Yellow Dog Flyfishing, the industry's #1 specialty travel company and the fly shop for the world of fly fishing. Freshwater or saltwater, international or domestic, Yellow Dog has you covered for your next fishing adventure. And now your host, author, photographer, and world traveler, Jim Klug.
Welcome back to Waypoints, the podcast where we explore the places, the people, and the passion behind the world of fly fishing. I'm your host, Jim Klug, and today we're sitting down with a fascinating guest, someone who not only lives and breathes fly fishing, but has made it his full-time profession. Joining me for a recording on location in beautiful Punta Allen, Mexico, is Francois Botha, a seasoned fishing guide, lodge manager, and true global angler who has worked in, explored, and fished some of the most remote and incredible destinations on Earth. Francois' fishing journey and professional path has taken him across continents and oceans, from the flats of the Indian Ocean to the wild rivers of Alaska, from expeditions in the jungles of Central Africa to the permit waters of the Yucatán and the salmon rivers of Russia. Today, Francois and his wife Dasha work as lodge managers for the Palometa Club in Punta Allen, one of the world's premier destinations for saltwater flats fishing. During the off-season from Ascension Bay, Francois shifts gears and heads north to Alaska to fish and explore the prolific Aniak River region before heading home to Africa to chase tigerfish, GTs, and pretty much anything else that comes his way. Francois' decades-long involvement with overseeing fishing operations, guiding, exploring new waters, and creating world-class guest experiences makes him uniquely qualified to talk about what it really takes to succeed in the world of destination fly fishing and angling hospitality. Which is why, in today's conversation, we're going to dive into the realities of making a career out of lodge life, guide operations, and angling travel. We'll also discuss the preparation, the challenges, the rewards, and the day-to-day grind of living at a fishing lodge full-time, something that many visiting anglers romanticize, but few truly understand. We'll talk about what it takes to run a lodge as a team, how to deliver unforgettable client experiences, and what life is really like behind the scenes at the world's best operations. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. Waypoints is sponsored by Patagonia. To bring their gear to life, Patagonia is motivated by relentless curiosity and a passion for the wild. They evaluate hundreds of materials, build dozens of prototypes, and spend seasons punishing them in the world's most extreme conditions. The work is the guide, and Patagonia never tires of exploring, learning, and improving. Be sure to check out Patagonia's new Swift Current waders, repatterned and redesigned for bulk reduction, reduced seam stress, increased maneuverability, and improved repairability. Made from recycled materials without intentionally added PFAS, Swift Current waders move better in and out of the water. Francois Botha, welcome to Waypoints. It's good to be sitting down with you.
Thanks, Jim. Great being here.
Well, describe to us where we are. I mean, we're recording this episode on location, as we often like to do when we go out in the field. We're here in Mexico. You and your wife, Dasha, manage the Palometa Club, a great fishing lodge that focuses on famous Ascension Bay here in the southern Yucatán. But give us a little bit of the setting. Kind of describe to our listeners where we are and what we're looking at here.
Yeah, well, right now we're sitting here looking out over the Caribbean in southern Mexico. We've actually seemed to have some bad weather rolling in, so good thing that the day of fishing is almost done. But yeah, palm trees, turquoise ocean, blue skies, that's where we are.
Beautiful setting here at the lodge.
Beautiful setting, yeah, and quite remote. We're on the southern tip of an island peninsula, for the listeners' reference, close to Tulum. But I think Ascension Bay amongst fly fishermen is well known enough for people to know where we are.
Pretty well known. And we're in the village of Punta Allen, which is not just a fishing village, but this is very much a fly fishing village.
I would agree with you. I think that it was originally founded as a lobster diving village, But, with the advent of fly fishing, it's definitely become the main cause or reason for people to be here. Families, guides, clients, lodges, etc. Fly fishing certainly is the sort of anchor point for the economy, for visitors, for workers, anybody in Punta Allen.
And they proudly refer to themselves as the permit capital of the world.
Yes, they do, and I believe it to be true. Although to be a capital, you need at least a few thousand people, and we're much smaller than that.
There's about 500 people here. Is that right?
I think it changes seasonally.
Okay.
I think permanent residents, you around 400, but I think that as it changes during the season, so up to about 800 people that live in town.
Well, right off the bat, I have to ask you. We heard in the intro your South African heritage, but I have to ask a question that everyone in the industry is still trying to figure out. And that is, how have a handful of South African anglers over the course of maybe 2 generations, how have they had such a massive impact on this sport and also the business of fly fishing? I mean, I swear that there's maybe like 40 or 50 South African guides and hardcore anglers who have had more of an impact on the sport in the past 15 or 20 years than any other group I can think of. Why is that?
It's an interesting question. I've often thought of it myself. Jim, I mean, we didn't invent fly fishing. I think that modern day fly fishing we can attribute to the Americans and to a smaller degree to the British. But, it really developed there, and we were somewhat isolated for a while. We always saw these magazines with these guys in the magazines holding up all these fish, the tarpon, etc. And we didn't have any of that. We didn't have flourishing trout fisheries and, tarpon on the flats and bonefish on our flats and so forth. And we were infatuated with fly fishing. We always had a big outdoor culture. But I think that at some stage, amongst fly fishermen in South Africa, we realized, well, look, we could have some of that, but we could just have it with different species or different places. And it was, I think we were just lucky that at that point, the whole world was starting to look outward to other places to fish. Destination fly fishing had become a big thing. And then suddenly there were these new kids on the block, and they were doing these sometimes crazy, things. But ultimately, I think that we were given a tool, but we just had a blank canvas to begin with. And that really helped. But I wouldn't say we did it alone. But we were certainly inspired by the likes of, a Lefty Cray and, the Lee Wolfs and even some of the more, modern fly fishermen and stuff to go out and kind of get a piece of this,
I'm just fascinated, though. I mean, all the places I've traveled in the world, usually the ones that are most off the grid, most adventurous, kind of wildest places you can imagine in the world of destination angling. Typically, there's a South African there, but probably they were the ones that either founded or pioneered it or really, moved it forward. And again, it's just a few dozen guys that seem to have left this massive imprint on this industry over the last couple decades. It's really impressive. I don't think you can say that about another group of anglers. I know you can't say that about Americans. As big as the sport is in the States, you just don't have that same kind of hardcore pioneering, exploratory type mindset that you find with these South African anglers.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, but you also have to look at the USA, your amount of fishable water, the diversity you have, and so forth. I mean, you wouldn't need to venture anywhere else for a lifetime if you explored every fishery that the United States has to offer. And so I think that was very convenient, and perhaps didn't foster people looking too much further out and stuff. And there we were, with eking out a few fish out of a stream somewhere that was either stocked there and were never really big and stuff. And we really had to look at how do we create this for ourselves, and that's where the likes of myself and the African Waters and the Fly Castaways and the guys like that went and they found these places, these undiscovered places and so forth. And quite often they were associated with fish species that weren't so popular yet, take a GT that was considered a jack. A jack was something that ate your fly before the permit or the tarpon did, right? That's why it was called a trash fish. And, we grew up, revering these fish. These were the ultimate fish to go and catch. A GT in the surf on fly was just the most amazing thing. For us, that's our culture. And we get to the Seychelles, the Seychelles developing as a bone fishery for the Americans, and the South Africans arrive there and they see a bunch of GT swimming around going, well, why aren't we fishing for them?
Forget these bonefish.
And it took a while, but slowly everybody else cottoned on that, the GT fishing is really something to be considered. So much so that it's now probably one of your top 3 saltwater species for fly fishing, destination fly fishing, in the world.
And you throw in all these exotic species. I mean, whether it's tigerfish or, Goliath tigers or Nile perch or all these crazy species that really hadn't hit the scene yet for a lot of American anglers, or I would even say international anglers that weren't in Africa. And then that became like the sexy trip. And, what fascinates me about this is it's not just the opportunities you guys had and capitalized on, but also the mentality combined with just the sheer grit and toughness that it took. I mean, I often tell these stories to my friends, like, we live in Bozeman, fly fishing Mecca, USA, Western states. And I'll go into a fishing bar, on a typical summer afternoon after getting off the water. And, all the guides are in there and they're like, oh, bro, man, it was a brutal day out there. Like, you don't know how hard it was. There was a line at the boat ramp and, man, just super difficult. And then I think about what, you guys, the African Waters team, a lot of the guys in the Seychelles, the guys in Tanzania, and like what they're dealing with. It's like, wow, there's everything from charging Cape Buffalo to, crazy situations in the bush. And it's like, that is a hard day of guiding. This is, a day on the Missouri or a day on the Madison where there's, a line at the boat ramp. That is not a hard day of guiding.
Yeah, look, I mean, you've got to start off with saying that we fished, there are no boat ramps. And we'd really love to have them and welcome any sort of congestion in a properly constructed boat ramp. We once had this ideal of fishing right in the chasm of the Victoria Falls. And it was at a particularly low flow, and myself and Gerard Simpson went, and we got the rafting team, from Livingston to help us, and we ported everything down right to above rapid number 1, and then we hoisted down these inflated boats, got them right, like surfing on the lip of rapid 1, attached to a cleat on the side of the wall. Everybody jumped in. The whitewater rafting guy just started rowing his little ass off, and he just managed to get us into the chasm, and there we were.
Yeah,
but
by the way,
under the legendary Victoria Falls.
But hippos, crocs, I mean, like crazy stuff.
I think it's so dangerous under the falls, you don't even find hippos or crocs there. so
they're not even tough enough.
They're not even there. But yeah, the hippos and the crocs. I think that when it comes to even dangerous animals and so forth, don't put it past a very good Alaskan guide to, for instance, read a bear properly
very
and correctly and so forth. And,
very fair.
And I think that we just learned how to do the same, but we seem so much more heroic doing it because of movies like Ghost in the Darkness and so forth, where lions attack and kill people at will, and Jaws, where sharks just come and eat everybody off the surface. And if you know your environment well enough, you know where it's safe to go and how to traverse it.
That's a good point. Plus, you guys are doing it with a pretty cool accent too, so it just it sounds more badass. Yeah.
The Americans are the only ones that think that South African accents are attractive.
Well, so you grew up in Johannesburg, in South Africa.
I did, yeah, city boy.
City boy.
Yeah.
And did you come from a fishing family, or was this something that you kind of found your own way into this world and were addicted from that point? How did it start?
Look, my father definitely wasn't Henning Hell Orveston from the River Wye, but I mean, he loved fishing, and he taught me how to fish from a young age, and I was always, I found it my whole life. I was always sort of distracted, a little bit hyperactive and distracted and so forth. But I found that fishing was just this thing that it just sucked in all of my focus. It was like when I saw a puddle of water, I was going like, what could possibly be in there? And I'd start with the hierarchy of there's fish, I'm fishing. And if there are crabs, I'm catching crabs. And if there are frogs, I'll catch the damn frogs. But if it's in the water and it's swimming around freely, I need to lay my hands on it. And, that infatuation carried on for a long time until I was introduced to fly fishing. And that really sealed the deal.
That seems to be like a common theme with a lot of people. Our buddy Joe Dilschneider in NS Montana calls it the defective gene club. You know, you just you get this weird obsession at a young age, and it's like your life is over. Sorry, you're going down that path, and that's all there is.
I think so, and I think you just, I don't know, it just absorbs you so much, you know, and I have to say, I think it's also, you know, people that go down the sort of fly fishing career path are quite often the degenerates that didn't want to, you know, work hard and, you know, go and do like an accounting or a doctor's job or something like that. They felt like they would go and live like hippies somewhere else and just catch fish and live off that. And how things have changed, you know, you eventually you reach some success, you get really serious at it, and now you're building these businesses. And as you said, you know, we've got these people that just had an extreme passion for fishing, South Africans that had to go and fetch it from far in the Central African Republic or the Congo or so, and realized that there was now a need or a demand for this sort of thing around the world. And, you know, then you ultimately just start, you know, working a business or something like what you always avoided doing.
Yeah. Well, how did you first find your way into the work world of fly fishing? You know, was it guiding from the get-go, or was it hosting, or were there other roles or opportunities that kind of launched you into fly fishing as a career path?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Coming up this November 4th through the 9th, join Yellow Dog Fly Fishing for an experience unlike any other. One of a kind Belize Bluegrass Week at El Pescador Lodge. This incredible couples trip blends world-class saltwater fishing with nightly concerts featuring Grammy-winning bluegrass artists and top-tier pickers from across the U.S. We're talking serious talent, great flats fishing, and a private Caribbean venue. Guided fishing and non-angling activities during the day, and exceptional bluegrass music under the stars. A few spots remain open, and we'd love to have you there with us. For more information, give us a call, 406-585-8667, or email Matt at yellowdogflyfishing.com.
Look, I mean, the minute I started fly fishing, I was drawn to, you know, the retail shops, and within months, I went and got myself a summer job in Mark Yellen's fly fishing shop back in the day. It was the one to go to in Johannesburg. And I just started soaking in the information. You know, back then, there wasn't a guiding industry in South Africa. To be honest, in the late 90s, I don't even know the name of a single person that considered himself a professional guide, fly fishing guide in South Africa. You know, that's how young the game is over there. And, you know, I hopped along like that, and I even, you know, worked in tackle shops or retail shops in the House of Hardy in London, you know, when I was...
You did some time up in London.
And I worked there for a year, and it was one of the best years of my life. Loved that retail shop like it was my own, you know, and then sort of came, the people in the shop that kind of said, well, can you guide? Can you help me with the fishing and so forth? And I was kind of like, yeah, of course I can. And, you know, eventually got out on the water with guys and realized that I've got this passion for helping people catch fish and how much passion or pleasure I derived from helping them. And it was in and around that time that this whole adventure travel and fly fishing, destination fly fishing started kicking off, you know, and the discovery of the Seychelles in the late 90s and so on. And so it became a real option. And so that's, I think, where I was drawn to it. And then in about 2005, when I was 25, I started my first guiding company to go up and guide people for the tigerfish on the Zambezi. Yeah.
And where did that lead? I mean, so it's like, okay, you're in Africa. You had done your time in London. You go back to South Africa. You're back in Joburg. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to jump into the guiding thing. You start doing the tigerfish deal. How did that work out? I mean, talk a little bit about that.
Dude, I still can't believe the things that I did back then to try and get this business off the ground and how little I knew about it and so forth. I mean, I'd found a place where you can go and catch tigerfish on fly, and it was all the way up in Zambia, in Barotsi land, in the western part of Zambia. And I remember having, on my first ever trip, taking my little pickup truck. It's a little Ford Bantam. I mean, it's tiny. It's the size of a little Suzuki Swift. And I drove through 4 countries, with this non-4x4 vehicle with lots of extra spare tires on the back, extra gas, and God knows what else. And I mean, there was a memorable time when in June, which is the dry season up there in Botswana, I was heading up towards Kazangula, and there's this very long straight road. And lots of people that have traveled from Nata up to there have traversed that road, and it had just rained. Like, who would have guessed it would rain back then? And all of these little puddles had formed on the edge of the road. And I was coming down this straight road, and there was a big bull elephant in the middle of the road. And he was walking down the middle of the road, and you couldn't get past him. It was too big. The road's too narrow. And he basically went to each little puddle and started sucking them up and drinking them, and zigzagging across the road to each little puddle. And I was basically reversing, just keeping my distance from him until I said, okay, I can see he's going to go for that puddle. This is my gap. And basically just dropped the clutch and screeched, the tires screeching and so forth, like charged past this elephant. And there I was on my way again. But I mean,
again, not your typical day on, going to the Madison River.
No, man. I mean, I still can't believe that I did all of those things, and driving man alone up there and something to go and now do my first ever guiding, clients that were arriving and things like that. So it was very disorganized, and it was very sort of happy-go-lucky, like it'll work out kind of thing.
And you were young, but you were like, I'm doing this. This is something I'm going to put together this guide company. I'm going to guide tigerfish. I'm going to get some clients and make it happen.
Yeah.
And then from there.
Yeah, from there, I suppose, I mean, I quickly realized my limitations. I mean, our market, although it was by then somewhat established, it was difficult to attract people. I didn't have a name. Why would anybody go with me? And also South Africa still had a bit of a strange view on guides and being guided. Everybody had always just done it themselves. And now suddenly you've got to fork out more money for somebody to go and show you what you perfectly know well what to do. So it was difficult convincing people, and ultimately my business didn't flourish. And I was at it for about 2 years when a friend of mine that was running a retail store in South Africa called Frontier Flyfishing, at the time the biggest and best retail store, when they decided to launch trips to go to the Seychelles, that had now gained a lot of popularity. And they dangled this big carrot in front of me saying, listen, do you want to go to Cosmolino to go guide for us? And I said, anytime. They said, listen, you've got to close your guiding company down if you want to join us. I said, no problem. And they said, oh, by the way, you're also going to become a permanent member of staff in the store. And I said, no problem. Just let me go to Cosmolino. And I did. And I think that opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to so many things. The type of fishing that's out there. I mean, let's not kill ourselves. I mean, that was arguably that was the craziest fishing and so that I'd ever seen. But also the market, and that there would be people that would pay that much to go on a trip. And back then you could go to Cosmolino for $6,000 for the week, right? And it was an astronomical amount, and man, everybody was booking. And so it opened my eyes to the potential of the market. And we didn't even book many American clients back then. It was always trying to find the sort of well-to-do South Africans that could afford a trip like that. So by then, I'd only scratched the surface, and already I was inspired to see that, look, this is possible, but it's going to take a bit longer to build the clientele.
And this was early Cosmolino, and this was also early Seychelles. By the way, all, again, having been pioneered by a small group of South Africans that kind of put it on the map, first for the South African clientele, then opened it up to the American anglers. But this was back in like the old Indian Ocean Explorer days, the liveaboard.
The animal's bum.
Yeah.
That's what we called it.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't get the stink of that boat out of your bags and your wading boots for 3 months after getting back.
I remember you would basically bring everything home, and you would just be like, I'm just going to throw it out.
Throw it away.
Yeah, I'm just going to replace it.
I just didn't have enough money to buy a new one, so I had to keep my old stinky stuff.
But those were the early days of the Seychelles. And now you're working in this incredibly exotic environment with fishing like you could never have imagined. I mean, I often refer to the Seychelles, it's like fishing in a Dr. Seuss book, because they're just, amazing species. And it's as if you gave a 5-year-old, a a blank stack of paper and a bunch of crayons and you said, create some fish, right? And that's the Seychelles, because amazing species, dozens and dozens of different things you can catch on a fly at any given time. And here you are, it's now being kind of pioneered, run, controlled, and offered by fellow South Africans.
Yes.
And this is the point where it starts to open up to the world. And here comes
That's right.
the Americans and the Europeans, and now the Seychelles gets hot.
Yeah, it is hot. And I mean, a lot of people are, saying that, look, it's changed a lot over time. Yes, it has, but everything does. But I believe that what the guys are doing right now, is a very good thing. They're very conservation minded. And the development that's going on there, I think, is focused on keeping it exclusive and so forth. So, if you have a look at what could happen there and what has happened elsewhere, I definitely think the direction that the Seychelles and how they're developing and how they're focusing on a sort of an eco experience and so is definitely a great model. And I think the Seychelles are lucky in the sense they took so long to develop, because they do have all of these other examples to draw from and to be inspired from. So, I mean, although it's becoming very expensive.
It's not $6,000 anymore.
It's not $6,000 anymore. Although it's becoming very expensive, I do believe that the development and the way that the fishery is going is probably for the best.
Yeah. And one of the reasons it is so expensive these days is because of the way it's managed and limited and controlled. And that's why the fishing remains so amazing.
I mean, it's so consistent. If you have a look at how a fishery like, in Alphonse Island and stuff would just bounce back and suddenly become, a better island than Cosmo or Providence to fish on for a whole season, with the amount of GETs and triggers and permit and everything that are getting caught there. I mean, it's a regenerative fishery. And so it's nice to actually see that out of the blue, one of the atolls just start firing the way that it used to and so forth. And, then everybody rushes over there, and then there's another one that fires again. But it's good to see the rejuvenation like that.
Yeah. So you do your years in the Seychelles, yes, and then you find your way back to more kind of Central Africa with a mindset of like, there's some stuff out there that no one's done yet. You're going to go explore it. And that's how you find your way to DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, places that nobody's really going.
Yeah, we we had become sort of very reliant on the Seychelles back in the day. In 2008, we had that issue where, the Indian Ocean Explorer was captured by the Somalian pirates, and, its crew was held, hostage.
Shut the Seychelles down, the out islands.
Shut the outer islands down and so forth. And, and so we had to start, and now we had all these people saying, well, where can we go? Where can we go? We'd built up this client database and people that really wanted to go fishing with us and loved what we did. And, well, I mean, where could we go, right? I mean, there was a reason why people weren't flying across entire oceans and so forth to the likes of Belize and where we are right now. It's just, it was too far for them, just as it's too far for many Americans to fly all the way across the African continent, right? And we sort of looked at, okay, well, what is there that people would want to catch? I mean, we've got a bunch of indigenous species, love them to bits, but I can't market those. I can't make somebody travel a long distance to come and fish for them, although I love the fish. It just doesn't seem like the time is right for many of those species.
For example, like yellowfish in Africa.
Like yellowfish and so forth. What a tremendous fish.
But it just hasn't caught on yet with the American market.
Yeah, I just haven't had somebody wanting to travel that. And that's me saying that. There are other guys that are running bona fide, amazing yellowfish expeditions down the Orange River through the Richtersveld, sleeping under the stars. The consummate African drift boat experience, and I mean, I could recommend it to anybody. I'm just not doing that, right? I was sort of looking at something that, where's this demand? What is this one fish? And we all kind of agreed that the only other species that we could see that would really attract the American market would tarpon, right? I mean, it's got a huge following. I mean, it's probably considered still one of the number one game fish, in fly fishing and so forth. And so we started looking at the west coast of Africa, and that's a very daunting task because, I mean, that the Congo or the Central Africa and so has been marred by all sorts of instability, violence, coups, wars,
Civil
and so
wars,
forth.
yeah.
And it had almost just started opening up. And so everybody still had there was still a pretty bad stigma around it and stuff. But, but we realized we've got to look for tarpon. And man, we started going first Google Earth, and then you look around. And then and I looked and I would say, Sierra Leone. And at the time, Arno Mathieu was my partner. And Arno Mathieu would say to me, buddy, do you have any idea what's going on in Sierra Leone right now? And I said, no, but the fishing looks good. He said to me, we're not going to Sierra Leone.
Yeah, okay. And Arno Mathieu, by the way, absolute legend. I mean, one of the OGs. He's been on this podcast before. If anyone listening hasn't listened to the podcast with Arno, go back and listen because he's the real deal. And early on,
No, he's the real deal. He was a big influence in my life as well. And well, anyway, we were around, and I mean, it boiled down to us really not knowing where to go, but knowing we need to go. And I was at a dinner party in Johannesburg one evening, and there was a guy there. And he was a surfer. And he came up to me. He said, hey, by the way, you like fly fishing, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, do you like a fish called a tarpon? And I looked at him almost like, is this a joke? I mean, yeah, of course I do. And he says, well, that's interesting because, we go to this place in the Republic of Congo. There's a guy, and he's got a small little surfer shack right up in the north, and only point break there. But he's so frustrated because his kids don't want to surf there because he says that they're scared of the tarpon rolling in the waves next to them, that they're as big as sharks.
Like,
so I was like, give me that
up.
Guy's number, right? And that's how that started. And we eventually went full on into the Republic of Congo, discovered a tremendous fishery, caught fish that were bigger than you can imagine. I think, my one fish measured was 240 pounds. I mean, there were fish even bigger that we landed. I mean, we were never after records or anything like that. And yeah, we discovered this fishery, but the timing just wasn't right yet. The infrastructure was non-existent. There were just a few challenges that made that project not be able to take off. In general, and from there, I sort of, started looking inward. Well, what else is there? And a big dream of mine was always, ever since I was a kid, I'd learned about this thing called the Goliath tigerfish. That's the giant tigerfish, right? You only find them in the Congo River Basin, not elsewhere. Like in Tanzania, those are big tigers, but they're not Goliaths.
And Goliaths can literally grow to over 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Massive
I think
fish.
like the biggest accurately recorded one was 100 pounds, and then they've been known to go to 120, somewhere around there. And everybody always told me it's impossible. No one will ever catch one on a fly. It's the hardest fish in the world to catch. You can't find them. You can't feed them. You can't do anything. They're just. And
because you're South African, you're like, yes, please sign me up.
Well, once again, I refer to what Arno once told me. He said to me, Bud, the only way to find out is to put a fly here. Put a fly in front of its nose and see if it will or won't, right? That's the only way you'll know. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find that they do eat flies, right? So I was always confident that I'd be able to do it. And so there started an enormous chapter of my life where I kind of gave up all of those, saltwater and overseas adventures and the mainstream guiding and stuff with the sole purpose of finding a place where, first of all, proving it could be done, which we did in 2008, and then finding the Shangri-La, the Cosmo or the Jurassic Lake of the Goliath, somewhere it had to exist.
The Fountain of Youth.
The Fountain of Youth, a place where the devil deals them into the river like Ace of Spades to go and, terrorize fishermen and animal alike. Because it really is a terrifying fish if you look at them, right? And that happened. And in 2014, discovered a place in the Central African Republic where, and part of the country was still marred with a civil war and a coup. But, I had to go. I had to go and see. And everybody thought I was crazy, especially the people at the airport who'd never heard of anybody going to go and fish in the CAR, everybody thought I was a CIA spook or a diamond dealer or something of the sort. But discovered that fishery and that really put me through my paces. I don't know how many times I nearly died, but I don't think it ever occurred to me. I always knew I would be fine, and I just had this thing that guided me and made me do it, kind of thing. Almost waking up at the end of 2014, I woke up and said, okay, well, what now? After discovering that.
And that what now became Russia.
Well, that what now actually became me leaving the fly fishing industry entirely. I had chased this fish, this enigma, Goliath, for so long, and I'd actually forsaken so much and given so much up to do it that when I finally did it, I really didn't know what to do anymore. I was lost. And I left the industry and I joined a corporate and started working the corporate world and did it for 3 years. And I was very successful. But at the end of that, I realized I was dreadfully unhappy. And at the age of 37, resigned, packed my bags, called an old friend of mine, Christian Pretorius, and said, listen, buddy, I need to get back in. I don't mind starting as a rookie. Give me a number to call. And he put me in contact with the guys from Nervous Waters, and I headed off to Argentina to go.
That's right. Argentina came first.
To go and guide Dorado, and just immediately found myself again.
Yeah. Golden Dorado in South America.
Yeah. Golden Dorado in South America. I mean, what a magnificent fish! What a magnificent place! Great company to guide for, and I sort of suddenly hit the mainstream because now you had all of these international personalities, all these people that I'd only ever heard of or so, getting onto my boat and fishing with me, and from there, my eyes opened up and I said, listen, this is a real thing. You could become a very successful person in this business if you know what you're doing and if you do it right. And I think in that sense, I'm very, very glad to have done the break from fly fishing because, that was all I ever knew, apart from studying a degree in philosophy and journalism, right? I mean, that's all I ever knew. And so I definitely lacked business skill, and I definitely lacked quite a few things that within a 3-year period in the corporate world, I think I made up for. I think I learned it. And I had a fresh pair of eyes to look at my career with and say, hey, you can really do this and you can do this well. And that was the boost I needed. So if you asked me, my fly fishing career really started when I was 37 years old.
After everything you had done in the Seychelles and the Congo and in CAR and all these places you had been throughout Africa, you take time off and it's like the restart.
And it's the restart. And I really look at that as the restart, as the time that my career actually really started.
Was that the moment when you're like, you know what, I can actually make this a profession. This is what I can do. I can go to really interesting places around the world. I can guide. I can manage. I can put these things together. So yes, you're chasing the dream, but you're doing it in a way that actually makes it work. Like you said, you can make a profession out of this.
Exactly. I recall there was, my father passed away when I was 21, and I think I always lacked a little bit of guidance, as a man. It was my father and I had only just gotten to like each other again after my teenage years, before he passed away. So I never really got to have these conversations with him where I could learn of business and things like that. And I had many father figures as time went by that I met through fly fishing, and I got really close to some of these guys. And one of them, Saul Braun, a plastic surgeon from South Africa, I hope he listens to this podcast sometime. He said to me, and he kept saying to me, Franny, why are you doing this? Why do you keep going at this fly fishing thing? And I said to him, well, Saul, I love it. And he said to me, yes, but that's no reason not to be successful. And that really hit home. And that, I think, also influenced me to quit and to go after a proper career, because what he said made sense to me. But now suddenly I was faced with this revelation that I can be successful at something like fly fishing and stuff. My sudden realization of just how big the American market is, and of this giant engine that's churning, and et cetera. I mean, I never had any exposure to it. I was sitting in Central Africa, being stung to death by bees and, trying to avoid getting eaten by whatever crawled into my sleeping bag. I mean, it was, so it was a revelation. And from there, things really just sped up. Then it was from there, I got onto a gig of going into Russia to the ASR, the Atlantic Salmon Reserve. Got a very coveted gig to go and do filming and photography of the prime part of the season at Rinda.
On the Kola Peninsula.
On the Kola Peninsula, North Shore.
That's Atlantic salmon fishing.
Northwestern Russia, where it borders Finland and so forth. And that was a tremendous experience as well. And I mean, just a helicopter flight and everything, and that wilderness, and also sort of my first exposure to the cold. You know, I was the tropic exotic, dude. I didn't, I wanted suntans and board shorts and things. I didn't want to go and fish in waders. Who fishes in waders?
But before you got there, did you even own a pair of waders?
I had a pair of 13-year-old G3 waders that somebody brought to me from a show once. And these things saw me through an entire, 4 weeks leaking, and God knows. No, actually, they didn't leak at all. The old Sims waders, those things never leak. But that was a great experience. Also because I think from the media side of things, I was really exposed to a sort of a new thing as well. And I'd had a bit of background in having run a few courses in audiovisual and having edited a few, baby or videos or so for people that had like old footage lying around, for extra cash when I was at university, So but I saw that how important the media could become. And also that's where I got to working with some of the bigger players in media, like the Flyfishing Nation, Stefan Domba and stuff that was working at Karlovka at the time. But maybe my most important takeaway from Russia was my today wife, Dasha.
Yes. This chapter, all fly fishing around the world. You're going to all these amazing places, takes you to Russia after this previous journey. And then your life obviously changes because you meet your partner and now your wife.
And you said this thing about South Africans and how they go and they're sort of, exploring the world and how influential they've become in fly fishing. Well, they've also become notorious women stealers. So you won't believe it, but a friend of ours, John O'Shales, a guy that guides in Australia, he poached a girl from Farlows in Russia, and she moved to Australia with him. And Dasha, my wife, was working for Farlows in Russia when she met me, right? She was running the ASR, but it's all sort of under one umbrella. And the first thing her manager said to her was, please don't.
Do you know what you're getting into?
We don't want to lose another Russian to a South African.
But she also, the fact that she was working at a fishing lodge, she was working in the fishing world, she clearly understood what she was getting into.
Yeah, I think she did. I think she did. Look, what was, I got really lucky there. I met the woman of my dreams. At the time, Dasha was running was doing a lot of work in the Farlow store in St. Petersburg. She was representing Sims and a few other big brands, in Russia. She was traveling to the ICAST and to all of the fly fishing shows annually and represented there. So she had been sort of pedigreed, groomed in this fly fishing role, some things that she never really had in mind. And she ended up as the manager at Karlovka and stuff, and that's where we met. And then, true to my South African nature, I plucked her up and took her away. And we've never looked back since. But yeah, that was a big move for us. And from there, my opportunities just kept on opening. And I actually ended up doing quite a lot of media, filming in media for a fairly wealthy Russian, traveling around the world with him on his, whether it be his yacht or his this or that. And so became more involved in lodges, and, he had bought a lodge and appointed me, sales manager of the lodge all of a sudden. And I looked at him and saying, listen, dude, I couldn't make my own guiding company survive in 2005 due to the low amount of sales. And
you've just given me this lodge.
And now you want to give me one of the best lodges in the world to run, etc. Well, by then I'd learned enough to actually, I suppose, do it. And everything was going really well. And then COVID struck. And COVID just obliterated everything. Everything from relationships to the businesses to everything that was involved. And so that was a pretty quick collapse. And I was very disappointed because, so many years I'd been kicking this can around, and had even left the industry that I loved so much and got back to it with this renewed vigor. And I felt myself working harder and being more focused and more determined than I'd ever been in my whole life. So much so that I didn't recognize myself. And I had been at it for 2.5 years, and it was going unbelievably well. And then COVID struck, and it was a rug pull of note. And I was back on the bones of my ass, sitting. I remember, Dasha had managed to just come through to South Africa amidst all the travel bans and stuff. And I just received bad news. And we were in a room. We were living in a garden cottage in somebody's garden, half the size of the room we're sitting in. And I woke up and I had more bad news. And I went and sat down on a chair and started cutting up credit cards. She woke up and saw me in front of my desk cutting up credit cards so that we can't incur any more debt. And she stuck with me, and we just had to pick up the pieces and go again, start again, and then I got into a few more places where I could go guide and sort of made ends meet here and there, and that's when the opportunity to come to the Palometa Club, came up. A friend of mine, Patrick Duke, who I guided in Argentina. Yet another thank you to that mainstream that I had entered there, had introduced me to David Leake and them said that there was an opportunity, and that he thought that I would be a pretty good fit. And upon, speaking with David Leake, the interview, David Leake was surprised to hear that I said to him, well, look, I'm not a lodge manager, but my wife is the pedigree lodge manager. And he said, oh my goodness, you're married? You guys are a couple? And I said, yes. And he said, well, you've got the job if you want it.
Yeah, because that's a big thing. I mean, when you come to a place like Punta Allen, where we are right now, anywhere in the Caribbean, anywhere in the world for that matter, as a lodge manager, like if you're a single guy and you're being put into a remote location, it doesn't matter how good you are, how much you like it, you're probably not going to be there for long because, again, you're a single guy. You're like, I need a little bit more stimulation, a little more action. But for a lodge owner to be able to hire a couple is really the secret sauce of how you guarantee longevity and stability and keep that team in place for, a fair amount of time, because that's the deal. You come with a partner and you're good to go. You guys were offered the job. You decide, we've met in Russia. We've been to different places together. You had, again, been all over about half the planet at that time. And here comes the opportunity to say, we're going to move to Mexico, and we're going to manage a, flats fishing lodge, a permit-focused lodge in this little tiny village of Punta Allen. How was Dasha with that? How did that go over?
She was excited. She was excited. I have to say, I was met with very little resistance. But look, this was an opportunity for us, and I mean, I wonder if I should even say it now. I negotiated hard, but I was desperate. But she was fine with it, and I actually came to check it out, before one of my seasons elsewhere, and saw that it was a really good opportunity. And I met with Dave and the owners, and Paul and Dave and Alan, and had some talks with them, and a greater bunch of guys. A nicer bunch of people to have bought a lodge, and have afforded myself and Dasha an opportunity to come and settle down here and to run what is arguably, as you said, one of the best permit fisheries. And now with the advent of this newly discovered tarpon migration of ours through here and so forth. And those are exciting times. And, Dasha's taken to it like a duck to water. In fact, anybody that's been to the lodge will tell you that she runs this lodge.
Yeah, she's the boss. Absolutely.
She's the boss.
And you guys have been here now going on 3 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years now. Yeah, this is our third year. And every intention of staying on and doing another year here as well. We're on our way to also becoming ingrained in the community here with some of our community projects that are now taking up a big chunk of our day and of our efforts, and so in town. But it's we really like the place.
You're all in. Yeah.
We're all in. Yeah.
You're all in. Well, this is a growing segment of the travel industry. Whether it's being a fishing host or a fishing manager, one thing we're seeing quite often is again, couples come into it. We've seen it again, an inordinate amount of South African couples, like all over the Bahamas and Belize. And
we just want to get out of South Africa for some reason. Best country in the world, and we just want to get out of there.
But for someone who's thinking, geez, this looks like a really cool opportunity or a possible career path or something I might want to do when I'm young and can pack up and go to a foreign country, what advice would you have for someone who is saying, hey, being a fishing host or a lodge manager, living on location seems great. Talk to us a little bit about that. What kind of advice would you have to someone thinking about that?
Don't do it. That's a good question. I think that you've got to be. I think you've got to have a tested relationship. All right. It's not a good idea to pack up all your bags, debase yourself, and then go and test your relationship elsewhere. I think what worked for Dasha and I was that I think that COVID and the situation that I just described had really tested us. I knew she had my back, and we knew that we would get through whatever if there was a challenge or so. So you need to know that between you and your partner. You need to know that you're going to get through and over challenges, because I promise you, from the person that gives you this job to the person that has left this job, they're going to paint the prettiest picture in the world because they want you to be here and they want, to have a successful management couple.
But they want longevity too. They want you to come and they want you to stay.
Longevity. But there are challenges that nobody knows you're going to face, not even you, right? And you would only have to have been a lodge manager in a remote place like this to know what that means and to know what sort of challenges. But if you know that you and your partner have each other's backs, no matter what, whether it's, whether you disagree with something, you can have a full-blown fight about something, etc. But you're going to come back to the table and you're not going to drop the ball. You're going to make this work and you're going to work through it. That's what you need. You need that.
And I think, a lot of people will come down and they'll be here for a week, right? They're coming down there having a great time. They're so excited about the trip. They meet you, they meet Dasha, and they say, oh my God, you guys have the greatest job in the world. You basically get to live in paradise. They're looking at it through the lens of this is their vacation. This is something they've been looking forward to. And now you're a part of that. And they can't imagine how great and fun and easy this must be, right? Mm-hmm. The reality might be a little different. Because it's a ton of work.
I'm reminded of a time when I went out to dinner in a place called Clarence in South Africa, and it's a beautiful small town nestled in the mountains. Some good fishing around there, and I stepped outside. It was a time when I was still smoking cigarettes, and I stepped outside, and the one waitress that was serving us was also standing there. And sometimes you stand out there, so you're smoking cigarettes, so you've got to speak with somebody. And I said to her, and there was this beautiful sunset in front of us, with the mountains, and I looked at her and I said to her, Essie, you're so lucky to be working in a place with such a beautiful view. And she looked at me and she took a drag and said, yeah, but you can't eat the fucking sunset, can you?
Walk back inside, that was it.
And so
wiser words never spoken.
And well, I would say maybe that's a description of a job out here. No, look, it's a great job. I mean, to come and do it for a season or something like that, I can see why people would do it, and I can see how that would be a good idea for anybody that wants to take a gap year or something of the sorts. If you want to make a profession out of it, I mean, there are a handful of people that I've met that can do it, and I'm not even sure about myself. All right,
still out.
and so there, I don't know what sort of advice to give or so, but for a long-term career here, yes, people sort of look at you and they think it's an ideal job and stuff, but it is still a job, and it's still hard work, just like any work. And I think that what people don't always understand is the fact that you're in a position of, they're in a position of envy, right? They envy your lifestyle and that you can be here, etc. But they're there on holiday. They think that that's the feeling and the experience each time.
They think that they're looking at it like, my vacation is your life. You get to live this every day.
And on the opposite end, I'm sitting there looking at them, and they flew in there with their private jet and what else, and I go like, well, I actually envy your lifestyle. So I think that there's this sort of cross envy that happens, and people say like, this looks idyllic and so forth. It's far from idyllic. It's got its challenges, just like everything else in life that you do. I mean, can you imagine how much you love fly fishing, and can you imagine how much pain it sometimes inflicts on you, like when you're permit fishing, right? So I would say there might be some correlation to that. The guys see the fish being held up, but they didn't see the work it took to catch it, kind of thing. I don't know if that's a correct analogy, but yeah, we've got a great life, but it's not all roses.
So maybe a young person out there, or maybe an older person going through a midlife crisis, is like, you know what? I love fishing. I'm pretty good at it. I fished a lot of places. I'm going to go down and do this job. I'm going to make this. Maybe it's my career, or maybe it's like you said, a couple of years I'm going to dedicate to this. Well, just knowing how to fish or being a good angler, that's not enough. I mean, talk about some other skill sets that are absolutely imperative to the role of a lodge manager, a fishing host, someone that is running the operation on a almost year-round, day-to-day basis.
Some of the additional skills. I think that you've got to be cool and calm. Like, you've got to be temperate, right? And I think that I struggle with that sometimes. I'm quite an excitable person, but I learned a lot from Dasha, and I think that she's the consummate manager. So if you ask me something like that, I would refer to my wife and how I see her. She's the most temperate person that I've ever come across when faced with adversity, when faced with challenges, when faced with clients either complaining or even complimenting you. The way in which she accepts those compliments, the way in which she moves forward, and the way in which she tries to solve people's problems, and the cool and calmness with which she does it, I think is the backbone of any operation. If the manager of an operation is in flux, everybody feels it. Everybody knows it, right? I mean, it's the same as, when you're on a boat and you're a guide and you can see that your client's going very quiet, right? It's going to start affecting you as a guide. You're going to go wonder what's wrong, right? You notice it. So these things are noticeable, and so yes, you've got to have temperance, I would say, as a skill to learn.
I was going to ask you about, okay, let's go over some of the biggest challenges you deal with in this role, but I think that would extend the program by another hour, because I'm sure they're endless, right? I mean, whatever comes at you, you've got to deal with, whether it's the generator or, food deliveries or guide drama or staffing or any of that. I mean, it's endless, right? You have to wear so many hats and have so many tools that you can deploy to deal with the day-to-day operations of even just a single lodge.
Look, absolutely. And I think that another thing that comes with time, the temperance also comes with time, but knowing what to do or knowing the operation. I was a lot more in flux when faced with any sort of adversity back in the day when we just started here, when I still didn't know things and know how to do things. Now that I know how to do things and I know who to speak to about things and I know who's responsible for what and so forth and what could potentially even cause a problem, and so I'm far more relaxed and I'm far better at solving those things. So you definitely have to take a lot of time to learn the operation and to understand every part of the operation, because the minute you don't know what to do is when you stress, and that's one thing that I think is a key element.
How about the physical toll? And here's the reason I'm asking this, because you really, when things are busy, especially the spring season where you're going months, where you're fully booked, there's no downtime. I mean, you're running packages that are 7 nights, 6 days. So you have a changeover day. Your guests leave on a Friday morning. You've got another full lodge arriving on Friday afternoon. You might have 6 or 8 hours, but there's really no downtime. You're always on. You're always engaged. You're not, taking the weekends off.
You say downtime.
Downtime.
Is that a new show on Netflix?
You're like, I'm not familiar with that term.
I'm sorry, I just haven't seen it. Look, yes, I mean, I can tell you now that, look, I mean, we've been here 2.5 years. I was burnt out by month 4. So, and that was also, I mean, we've had our ups and downs here and so forth. Yes, the physical toll, but I think the physical toll isn't like what the mental toll is. But you need a healthy body to host a healthy mind. And I realized that I, for instance, I wasn't looking after my health enough, and sitting at the bar every night with clients, drinking and having alcohol, and once again, it's their 1 week holiday, but it's your
life
10-month year.
Yeah.
And so I definitely about a year ago or so, I started focusing on my health, and instead of taking something like downtime or so, making sure that I got to work out or that I got to stay fit, for 1 or 1.5 hours a day without fail, and that certainly has helped. So it's not like I had to reduce a physical toll. I had to induce a physical toll in order to also get my mind away from the business, have me time, downtime, and so, but be physically exertive and to sort of, clear my head.
Create that discipline and that structure. Yeah.
And so that's helped a lot. I mean, yes, for those guys with those Fitbit, wristwatches and stuff, 10,000 steps by breakfast. I've done 10,000 steps. These stairs up to our apartment, I mean, has been so well trodden by me. If you want to see ceramic wear under the soles of feet, you should come and have a look at our staircase. So that's a toll, but I think the mental toll really also, you go through the whole excitement of being here. And then you go through the, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? Then you go through the, I can't do this. What am I doing here? Then you go through the, I have to do this. And then you go through, okay, now I can do this. And you go, okay, now how can I improve this? And so I think what happens is you go into a place, full of aspirations. I think you sometimes get dealt a tough blow or a reality check, and you hit rock bottom, and that's a solid foundation to start from. And so from there, you build up and you learn. And so I think that's the sort of, luckily we achieved that some time ago. But there were definitely, in the beginning, there were times that I really didn't know if I was cut out for this. No.
Well, let me ask you this. How, you've got a whole group coming in every week, new crop of clients that come, they spend the week with you. How do you personally manage client expectations before they arrive? Mostly in your world, it's during a trip, but to make sure that people leave happy, even, if conditions are tough, because the one thing we all know in this world, you can't control the weather. You can't control what the fish are doing or how they're going to behave. You can control the lodge experience. You can control a lot of things, but you certainly can't control the fishing or what's going to happen out on the water necessarily. So talk to us a little bit about client expectations and how you manage that.
I think that's the age-old challenge of a fishing lodge. Is managing expectations but also control the controllable. I think that we've all heard that saying. It rings true for any fly fishing lodge. If somebody comes off the water and there's a cold towel for them that they expected, and there it is, and if their beer's cold, and if their shower's warm, and if their beds are beautifully made and there's something there, and if these days, or just have the internet work or something of the sorts, or just have things in such a way that, yes, you can't predict the fishing, but everything else that was expected, that was promised, is there, right? So yes, manage the expectation. Some people come here, with some fairly unreasonable expectations. Some people also come here and talk about, how there's either, too much pressure on the fishery, my favorite is, the one where people start talking about, but we heard that just after COVID, everything was so good and people were having 20 fish days and so forth. And I've said, yeah, but guys, that's not realistic. We know that, that was a once-off, etc. At the moment, you've got a fishery that comes in its ebbs and flows. And you've got permit that are there one day, gone the next. But what we can be assured of is that there are always going to be permit in Ascension Bay. I mean, man, like on the worst of days, there are going to be permit. You might just not be able to see them or so. The one thing that I've learned also as a manager of a permit fishing lodge is that permit and permit fly fishermen don't enjoy the same weather. All right.
Yeah. That's, you know what, that is a wisdom bomb right there. And I think we've done so many shows about permit. We've talked to so many permit guides and permit focused destination lodge operators. That is truth right there. Yeah. They don't always enjoy the same weather.
They don't enjoy the same weather. Trust me, that permit he's very happy in a hurricane, swimming around the churned up bottom, not even needing to dig for his food. It's all just been thrown up, mid-water. Yeah, I think from an expectation perspective, we also rely heavily on the people that sell our trips. Guys like yourself, Jim. You come here, you do your research, you know what the offering is, and you suitably prepare your clients for you. You say to them, guys, like, this is the type of food, this is the type of that, these are the logistics involved, this is the kind of fishing and so forth. And really, when we deal with good booking agents, such as a Yellow Dog or a Tailwaters or so, the expectations have been set right from the beginning. And occasionally somebody will have some other expectation or something. And most of the times it's something that just isn't available to us. And there's no other answer but no, I'm sorry. right. Like when you're probably going to ask me about what have been some of the most challenging
requests. Let's get into that. I like that. I mean, you don't have to give us any names or home addresses of these individuals. We get that. But I mean, what is your approach to dealing with a difficult or high maintenance guest? Because they exist. It's a rarity in the fly fishing travel world and in the booking world and in the lodge operation world, but it exists. You get somebody that comes down and they're just tough. Talk to us a little bit about how you deal with that.
I normally just send Dasha out to go talk to them. Look, sometimes I'll have, funny enough, some of the most difficult requests to sort of explain to people why we can't, fulfill them have all been around things like, medicines and things like that. You get a person coming to the lodge and they say, oh, I've got this thing with my stomach and all I need is and they blurt out this name of an antibiotic. And I would look at them and say, well, I mean, have you obviously got experience with this antibiotic? And oh yeah, no, I take them all the time. And I would say, okay, well, did you bring any? No, I didn't bring any. I'm sure we can just pop over to the store here and buy them. And I go, well, that's not going to be possible. All right.
Do you know where you are? Yeah.
It's 3 hours of bone-crunching journey by car to get to Tulum. And for antibiotics over the counter in Mexico, funny enough, even if you're a foreigner, you need a prescription. Did you bring your prescription? So some requests are often, I wouldn't say they're just people that are being demanding. I think that they could sometimes just be people where, once again, the expectation was that they were going to find a coastal town that's fully equipped with a 7-Eleven, and all of these other,
and a pharmacy,
and a pharmacy, and a dispensary, and a marijuana dispensary, and God knows what else they thought they would find here. But they come here to the stark realization that they won't. From a really difficult customer perspective, I have to say, and I've tried to put my finger on this, and that's that. I found that at the Palometa Club in the 2.5 years we were here, Dasha always says, she says, you get two types of guests. You get good guests and you get great guests, right? And we've had all of those. And I feel that somehow it's either thank you to our great booking agents, such as yours, Tailwaters and so forth, and the people that come here are generally of a certain kind. And The other thing I think is that everybody is so shit scared of not catching a permit that they've all got their necks wound right in like a tortoise, and they're walking around and they don't want to attract too much attention to themselves because they're all so scared of not catching permit. I mean, they could be blue, they could be red from a political perspective. The first night you look at them and you go, oh, we're going to have trouble, when they bring up elections and things like that. The next day, those two guys are at the bar drunk together, consoling each other, saying that tomorrow, maybe they'll get another few shots at some fish and some permit. And so really, I think that permit as a difficult species to target in saltwater is this amazing equalizer that sort of brings everybody down and brings everybody's expectations down 2 steps. And it really does make people look at their own faults and flaws a little bit more and more accurately when it comes to their casting distances, their expectations, and so forth. I
would also add another wisdom bomb here, and that is your behavior is directly proportional to how many fish you're going to catch. If you're going to act like a dick, the permit are going to know. Like it's just something karmic about it. I'm certain.
Permit karma is the strongest karma.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see traveling anglers make when they show, whether it's here at Palometa Club or the other lodges you've worked at? Is it lack of preparation? Is it lack of casting practice? That's a common theme we talk about a lot on the show. We always ask every guide in the world, like, one piece of advice to prepare your clients for the trip. And they're like, just please practice your casting a little bit. But any common mistakes you see that people make when they show up at a lodge like this?
No, I couldn't. I don't think that you can make a mistake. This is your trip to Mexico. And you were looking forward to this, whether it was because you wanted to see how much margarita you can consume or how many fish you can catch or how many times you can hit your guide on the head with a fly. But I think I could definitely just say, and I think it's back onto the casting game. You can do, travel agents can do so much to advise you on the best place to go. Airlines can take you and land you, amazing, like a hotel in the sky, land you on a big tarmac runway so that they build taxis can transport you to the lodge. Guides can come and pick you up and they can take you off to the best place, etc.
And they can put you on the fish.
And they can put you on the fish. But the last 50 feet is your job. It's your only job. And so I don't know why you would want to arrive here without being able to do your job.
Yeah. Enough said. I mean, again, we've done, 80, 90, 100 episodes of this podcast, and 95% of the episodes somehow get back to that. It's practice the casting and just arrive ready. But I love the way you phrase that. You've gone all these miles. So much has been involved in getting you there. So many people, companies, entities have been involved in delivering you, but you have to deliver that last 50 feet.
That's you.
That's you.
I mean, I always say that, people always talk about casting and for permit, and they go, no, but I need to be casting further and so forth. And I always say to them, and I really believe in this, if you want to be a permit fisherman in Ascension Bay, you need to be able to put a fly in a hula hoop at 50 feet in any wind. And then you can catch permit.
But it's not 90 feet.
It's not 80 feet. It's 50 feet.
50 feet with a 9 weight, let's say, which is very doable.
I would say 40 feet, actually.
Okay,
it's 30 feet.
We'll make it easier. 40
it's the
feet.
Head of the fly line and 10 feet of leader, and 10 feet of leader with a fly on the end. You don't even have to get any of the running line out the tip of the rod.
Yeah.
But if you can put a fly in a hoop at 40 feet in any direction and in any wind, you're a permit fisherman.
With a 9 weight.
With a 9 weight.
That's the thing.
It's not you can use a 10 if you want.
Yeah.
You can use an 8 if you want.
Yeah.
But that's the requirement.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Change gears a little bit. We send a lot of people to Mexico. It's a big program for us. One question we get all the time is about safety. Now, as someone who lives and works down here for a good chunk of the year, give us your honest perspectives on the safety of coming to a place like the Yucatán, and more specifically like Punta Allen, because it's a question that's out there. People will look at the news and they'll say, oh man, I saw what was going on in Sinaloa or on the border, and Mexico's off the list. I can't go to Mexico. And when I hear someone say that, it's like saying, well, God, there was a huge crime spree in Detroit or Chicago. There were some shootings. Therefore, I'm not going to think about going to Montana. I mean, it seems like, it's that far apart. So talk to us a little bit about, as someone who lives here, who works here, who's been here now for going on 3 years, the safety factor when coming to a place like specifically Punta Allen.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think I've ever felt safer.
Safer.
I've never felt safer,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I mean, everything from the smallest things like even petty theft, I just haven't noticed it. It's not even here. I mean, I've got, we as a lodge have so much gear and kit that's so valuable, in so many different hands and stuff. And honestly, nothing has ever gone missing in this lodge or have gotten stolen. So from that perspective, I think it's already a big pass, from a safety perspective. There isn't that sort of like small time crime or anything around here. There's enough for everybody. And, the whole community and stuff thrives on the business that the tourists bring here. And I think that's what also makes it so safe. And, a long time ago, Mexico and especially Quintana Roo realized just how important tourism is for their economy. In fact, I can't imagine that they've got anything else that they base their economy in this province on, really.
But even for the entire country, this is the golden triangle.
This is
Cancun to Playa, Tulum. This area is it for tourism. Not the only thing, but certainly the biggest thing in all of Mexico.
And I think that, and this is definitely my experience from all of these wild adventures that I did in Africa and my exploration there, was that one of the reasons why it was left open for me to explore, and one of the reasons why I could find places that had never been fished, completely uninhabited areas that were so easily looked over by other people, was the fact that people have a very poor geographic knowledge of places and of countries and so forth. And they don't realize how big a country is, and they don't realize how, for instance, violence in one city somewhere and one violent incident and so forth, illy reported on by the news, definitely doesn't mean that elsewhere or everywhere else that, that law enforcement has failed or that it's an unsafe place. And so I just think that if anybody's deterred by one bad news headline about something that happened on the other side of the country or something like that, they're doing themselves a disservice. First of all, for being somewhat insular and not knowing a little bit more, but also they're doing themselves a disservice because I really believe that this is one of the most complete fisheries and saltwater experiences that I've ever visited. And it's so easy to access. The price point is just right. I mean, we've got people returning here. 70% of our clientele are return clientele. I mean, they don't want new people to know about this place. So if you're going to listen to this, if you're going to be put off coming to a place like this because of one incident in the north where a very sketchy type of deal where people went for plastic surgery or so and snuck across the border for it because Mexico's, if you're going to, listen to these reports and stuff, you're going to be missing out on what we're doing down here.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. It's not just a wonderful fishery, but it's full of wonderful people. It really is. I mean, this community is amazing.
And, just from a safety perspective, because of all of the tourism and so that's happening here and so forth, I think that, just from a health perspective, or if you had a medical emergency out here and so forth, I know that we're very remote, but, we've stress tested our emergency procedures here over and over and over, and we know where to go and who to speak with and stuff. And there are people that are responsible for these things, and our basic safety equipment from the boats and stuff, and guides needing to be trained in first aid and so forth in order to be captains of their boats. We've really not only from the safety aspect we discussed earlier, but also from just the safety aspect of being here and taking part in an activity in a remote place. We've done a lot to make sure that it's a good, safe option for somebody to come out here.
Well, after all these years, Francois, let me ask you this, and I've just got a couple more questions for you. But what is it that keeps you passionate about this industry, running a lodge, continuing in this career, working with anglers from around the world? What keeps the passion going?
That is a very good question. I don't know. I think
Maybe it's just the defective gene club answer from the very beginning.
I think it's an effective gene club. Look, it's what I know. And I think that, when you start off in a career in fly fishing, you're astounded by how big the world really is and all of these things that you can go and explore and learn. And I think that once you've learned them, it's very gratifying being able to impart that knowledge and to be somebody that somebody comes and faithfully consults in and asking them a question about, well, what should I do? Where should I go? And so it's been great also, with our guests, even though I don't get to go out fishing every day. I get to do a fair amount of fishing here. But, when the guests come back in the evenings and they start talking about other destinations and places to go. And so it's very nice to be able to give them a sort of a insight into it and speak to them about, the potential of fly fishing. And so, and some people are at the beginning of their journey. And it's really good. I mean, it just gives you such a good feeling to be able to impart knowledge with them. Also get them excited. And to get somebody excited about something that you were excited 15 years ago gets you all excited about it all over again, So, so I think you run a course of first learning and then I suppose teaching, but you never stop learning.
And then sharing.
Yeah, sharing, definitely.
Yeah. Well, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, to a young Francois just coming out of university, starting out in his career, what would that piece of advice be, knowing what you know now?
Sure. One piece of advice. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. I think there will come many times when you will doubt yourself. And, I've been on the verge. I've been on so many, there have been so many times in my career that I've felt about throwing in the towel. And I don't know how or why, but something would happen that would show me, that would guide me and tell me, believe in yourself. This is the right way. You are doing the right thing.
Yeah. Good advice for sure. Okay. We're going to end this in a second, but I've got just a quick little round of questions. Now, no long answers.
Okay.
I want quick answers. I don't want you to overthink this. I'm going to fire a few at you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. You ready? Some quick one-sentence Q&As.
Got it.
All right. Favorite species to chase on the fly anywhere in the world?
GTs.
Giant trevally. Favorite piece of fishing gear you absolutely won't travel without? You always have to have it with you.
Loomis GLX Cross Current.
One place you haven't fished yet that is still high on your personal list of like, I'm going to get there. I can't wait.
Caroline Atoll.
Oh, no. Now we have to edit that out. You can't talk about that place. That's not for discussion.
Should we do another one?
Yeah.
Tristan da Cunha. Yeah, it's an amazing little island. It's one of the remotest settlements on Earth in the southern Atlantic Ocean. Really difficult to get there. There's a weather ship that travels there only once every 2 weeks from South Africa.
What do they fish for?
Big yellowtail, big yellowfin tuna, etc. But it is just one of the most, rich, nutrient-rich seas, in the world currently. And I'd like to go there.
All right, there you go. Next question. If you weren't managing fishing lodges or doing anything fishing related for that matter, what do you think you would be doing for a living?
Catching snakes.
Catching snakes.
Snake
Catcher.
Gotta see a snake, gotta catch it.
Right. This is going to be hard for you to answer, and you got to do it really quickly. Worst travel mishap you've experienced in the name of chasing fish? You're like, oh my God, the list is so long. Where do I start?
Broke off a really good relationship.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Last question. Describe your perfect day off in 3 words.
Fishing from my paddleboard.
There you go. Very cool. Well, that is great. And you know what? This has been so good, Francois. Thank you so much for sitting down with us, talking to us, telling us your story and sharing, not just wisdom, but also your journey. This has been very cool. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Jim.
Well, that is it for this latest edition of Waypoints. Francois, again, absolutely amazing. Great story. What a great life, and still more to come. Be sure to visit yellowdogflyfishing.com to plan and research trips to learn more about booking the Palometa Club. We would love to help you get there. We're proud to book it. We love this place. It's absolutely amazing what they're doing down here. Also to source gear, equipment, and flies for your next destination, and to stay up to date and dialed in on the latest news in the fly fishing world and the world of travel and adventure. Join us for our next episode, and remember, life is short, and no one ever regretted a life of adventure.
This has been another episode of Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel and adventure angling. Waypoints is produced by Brian Gregson and written by Jim Klug. Music is written and provided by bluegrass legend Woody Platt. Audio engineered by Sean McCormick. Visit yellowdogflyfishing.com for more location profiles, destination information, travel news, and the industry's best selection of flies and equipment for destination angling.